One of the most chilling facts about the Keddie Cabin murders is the disappearance of a 12-year-old girl from the crime scene. Her family was brutally attacked in their small holiday cabin, but she was simply gone. No ransom note, no clear sign of struggle. For 3 years, her fate was a mystery, deepening the horror of the crime. The murders took place in Keddie, a quiet, isolated community in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California. By 1981, Keddie was a faded resort, a place where people knew each other and violence seemed unthinkable. The silence that followed the crime was filled with fear and unanswered questions. On April 11th, 1981, the Sharp family settled in for what seemed like a typical night in Cabin 28. The older kids went out, the younger ones went to bed. No one heard anything unusual, no screams, no struggle. The surrounding cabins were occupied, yet the night passed with eerie calm. This lack of disturbance is one of the most unsettling aspects. Either the crime was swift and silent, or no one heard what happened just yards away. When morning came, the peace was shattered by the discovery of unimaginable brutality inside Cabin 28. Decades later, the full picture remains incomplete, and the mystery has turned Keddie into a place of dark legend. The silence was finally broken, but the questions it left behind have echoed for over 40 years. The lives lost and the justice never found continue to haunt the community. The Keddie Cabin murders remain a chilling puzzle, their secrets still buried in the mountain air. Even now, the case stands as a reminder of how quickly peace can be shattered and how some mysteries refuse to fade. The Sharp family had moved to Keddie from Connecticut seeking a fresh start. Glenna Sue Sharp, a single mother of 5, was determined to build a better life in this remote corner of California. They lived simply in Cabin 28, surrounded by the beauty of the wilderness. Her children, John, Sheila, Tina, Rick and Greg, were adjusting to their new home, making friends and exploring the woods. John, 15, and his friend Dana Wingate, 17, were inseparable, often out together. Tina, 12, was the quiet middle child, while Rick and Greg, the youngest, enjoyed the freedom of the mountains. The family had left hardship behind, hoping Keddie would offer safety and community. But the resort was past its prime, and some residents were transient, bringing their own troubles. The Sharps were newcomers, still outsiders in a place where some families had lived for generations. For a brief time, it seemed they had found peace, but the isolation that promised safety would soon become the backdrop for tragedy. The crime that struck Cabin 28 shattered not only the Sharp family, but the innocence of the entire community. What should have been a haven became the scene of one of California's most haunting crimes. The woods that once promised a new beginning became a place of fear and loss. The Sharp family's story is a reminder that darkness can find even the most hopeful places. On the morning of April 12th, 1981, Sheila Sharp returned to Cabin 28 after spending the night at a neighbor's. Expecting a quiet morning, she instead walked into a nightmare. The living room was in chaos, the air heavy with a metallic smell. On the floor were the bodies of her mother Sue, her brother John, and John's friend Dana Wingate, bound and brutally murdered. In shock, Sheila ran for help, her screams breaking the morning calm. The 2 youngest boys, Rick and Greg, along with a friend, were found unharmed in a nearby bedroom, apparently unaware of the horror just feet away. The fact that the killers spared the youngest children remains one of the case's enduring mysteries. But one child was missing, 12-year-old Tina Sharp. Her bed was empty, and there was no sign of her anywhere. As police arrived and the investigation began, a frantic search for Tina swept through the community. The discovery of the murders and Tina's disappearance left Keddie in shock and fear. The case was no longer just about murder. It was now a desperate search for a missing child. The horror of that morning would haunt the survivors and investigators for decades, and the question of what happened to Tina would become the case's most haunting mystery. Inside Cabin 28, law enforcement found a scene of chaos and extreme violence. The living room was the epicenter. Blood spattered, furniture overturned, evidence of a prolonged struggle. The victims were bound with wire and tape, attacked with a hammer and a bent steak knife. Sue and John suffered bludgeoning and stab wounds. Dana was strangled and beaten. The brutality suggested rage, not a simple robbery. Disturbingly, Sue and John's bodies were covered with a blanket, and a pillow was placed under John's head, a strange gesture of care amid savagery. The crime scene was quickly compromised as neighbors and onlookers entered before police could secure it. Evidence was trampled and contaminated, hampering the investigation from the start. The small-town police were unprepared for such horror. Critical mistakes in those first hours would haunt the case for years. The violence inside Cabin 28 was matched only by the confusion that followed. The search for answers would be plagued by these early errors. The victims were Sue Sharp, her son John, and his friend Dana Wingate. Sue was a devoted mother, trying to rebuild her family's life. John and Dana, both teenagers, had likely returned home late that night, possibly walking in on the attack. Their deaths were sudden and brutal, cutting short young lives. The most haunting detail was Tina's disappearance. Despite immediate searches, no trace of her was found. For 3 years, hope lingered that she might be alive. In 1984, that hope was shattered when her remains were found 30 miles away. Dental records confirmed the worst. Tina had been murdered. Her discovery, so far from Keddie, only deepened the mystery. The case now had a fourth victim and even fewer answers. The Sharp family's tragedy was complete, but the questions remained. The community was left to wonder who could commit such horror and why. From the start, the investigation was plagued by mistakes. The Plumas County Sheriff's Department was unprepared for a crime of this scale. The crime scene was not secured. Neighbors and onlookers contaminated evidence. Key interviews were rushed or incomplete, and early theories distracted from crucial leads. Evidence was mishandled. Bloody fingerprints went unidentified and items were lost. Even with help from state investigators, the case struggled to gain momentum. The first 48 hours, critical in any murder case, were marked by confusion and lost opportunities. As time passed, leads grew cold and memories faded. The initial errors made it nearly impossible to build a solid case. The Keddie murders became a cold case haunted by what might have been. Despite the flawed investigation, suspicion soon focused on 2 men from Cabin 26. Martin Smart and John Bo Bubaid. Martin, a neighbor with a violent past, had a troubled relationship with his wife Marilyn, who was close to Sue Sharp. Marilyn later told police Martin hated John Sharp and acted strangely the night of the murders. Martin claimed a hammer matching the murder weapon had gone missing from his home. Bo Bubaid, with ties to organized crime, was reportedly hiding out in Keddie. Marilyn said Martin and Bo returned late that night agitated and burned something in their wood stove. Despite these red flags, police did not act decisively. A therapist later reported that Martin's son claimed to have witnessed part of the crime, but this was never verified. Martin and Bo remained prime suspects, but no arrests were made due to lack of hard evidence. Both men died without ever being charged. Their secrets, and perhaps the truth, died with them. The case remained open, but justice was elusive. Years later, a potential breakthrough emerged. A letter from Martin Smart to his wife, allegedly confessing to the murders. In it he wrote, "I've paid the price of your love, and now that I've bought it with 4 people's lives, you tell me we are through." Marilyn gave the letter to police, but it mysteriously vanished from evidence files. Without it, the confession was hearsay, another lost chance for justice. Other evidence was lost as well. A hammer found near Keddie in 2013, believed to be a murder weapon, also disappeared from police custody. In 2016, the case was reopened by a new sheriff. Investigators found a recording of an anonymous call identifying Tina's remains before the news was public. Voice analysis pointed to Bo Bubaid as the caller. A hammer was also recovered from a local pond that year. These developments breathed new life into the case, but no arrests followed. The Keddie murders remain officially unsolved. Lost evidence and missed opportunities continue to frustrate those seeking answers. The truth, it seems, is still just out of reach. More than 40 years later, the Keddie Cabin murders remain one of America's most infamous unsolved crimes. Theories abound, but the central questions, who and why, are still unanswered. The leading suspects are gone, and the motive remains speculation. The surviving Sharp children have lived with trauma and loss, their search for justice ongoing. Cabin 28 was demolished in 2004, but the memory lingers. The story endures in documentaries, articles, and online forums. a modern folktale of violence and mystery. Advances in DNA technology offer a glimmer of hope that one day a match might finally reveal the killer. Until then, the Keddie case remains a haunting puzzle. It is a story of loss, mystery, and the search for truth. If you found this story compelling, consider subscribing for more true crime explorations. There are many more mysteries to uncover.